I'm going to be spending the next half hour or so kind of going over some of the new features for motion graphics, for visual effects, that are in the latest release of After Effects that just went live last week. How many here have already seen content-aware fill for video? Okay, I'm going to make you guys wait to hear about that until the end, but I've got a lot of really, really cool examples. Everything that I'm going to be showing you today for content-aware fill is straight out of the application. There's no additional modifications or changes done to any of the shots. For those of you who have very, very sharp eyes, you may see a little tiny bit of issues with things. Just know that that's part of my demonstration today, is to really show you how content-aware fill gets things 85, 95, even 100% of the way there, but it also opens up the tools so that you can go in, if you're pixel peeping and want to double check things, you have the ability to go in and modify it further than what we're providing for you. Before I really jump in and get started, just a couple of key things that I wanted to acknowledge. The After Effects team, along with the Photoshop team, were acknowledged by the Academy of Motion Pictures this year with a SciTech Award, so we were super, super excited about this. This was presented in, thank you. So the whole team was really excited. It's really cool because, particularly with the After Effects team, the product is over 25 years old, and a lot of the founders still work with the team, still work with the After Effects engineering. So a lot of them were actually at the award ceremony as part of that. The other area that we were acknowledged this year is we are a part of the Netflix Post-Technology Alliance. And if you deliver content for Netflix, you know that they have very, very stringent requirements as far as what cameras you can shoot on, what software is used, and what finishing tools are used. So both Premiere Pro and After Effects were acknowledged, and we are part of the Netflix Technology Alliance. So that was a really cool thing to see happen this year. Now I'm going to jump in and get started talking about motion graphics. And there's a word you're going to hear me use a lot today, MOGRT. I'm not talking about a breakfast food. This is a file format that Adobe came up with. It stands for a motion graphic template. It's just much easier to just say MOGRT. And the idea behind this is an encapsulated file format that can be generated in Premiere Pro, or more importantly, inside of After Effects. And it allows you to do motion graphic design inside of Adobe After Effects and package everything up into a file that you can hand off to editorial, and they can make the minor tweaks, the minor changes that are necessary, changing out text, and how much control they have is up to you as a motion graphic designer. So I'm going to walk you through the basic process of generating a MOGRT using some really, really basic examples here, and then we'll kind of step it up. I'll show some more advanced examples, and we'll get really into the advanced, some of the new features, particularly dealing with expressions. Just really quick, how many people here use After Effects expressions today? Wow, awesome. How many here hear the words After Effects expressions and are scared? Okay, I'm kind of straddling the middle of that, and there's some really cool tools in this release that I think are going to help you adapt and start to utilize After Effects expressions, because it really unlocks the power of After Effects. But to get started, I'm going to start with a very, very simple graphic here, just a simple corner bug with just a black box with some text over the top of it, a little white outline on the black box. I know you guys can probably design something much more amazing, but just to show you how simple this is, if I want to turn this graphic into a motion graphic template, the first stage in this is to open up a new panel. So I'm going to find the composition here, right-click on it, and choose Open in Essential Graphics. Now the Essential Graphics panel, and I'm just going to delete these properties here to show you what it starts looking like. It starts as a blank canvas. So you, as the motion graphic designer, get to do a bit of kind of interface design. You get to build the tools that the editorial staff is going to have to make changes and modify things. So once you are inside the Essential Graphics panel, a really nice thing to do is click this button up here at the top that says Solo Supported Properties. And by doing this, all of the properties that you see here, any one of these properties can be dragged and dropped up into the Essential Graphics panel, and that will then become modifiable when you bring this over into Premiere Pro. Kind of cool. So for example, I might want the source text. I can drag and drop the source text up in here. Now, I probably am not going to call it source text. I might call it title or name or something that's more appropriate for the editor. And notice this little edit properties button that we have listed here. I can click this and I can unlock the power of changing fonts, changing font size, enabling faux styles like boldface and italics. Now, if you work with a team of editors that are absolutely in love with Comic Sans, just make sure and check this box, uncheck it here. You can lock the font down to within corporate guidelines or within branding guidelines. So again, it's flexible. As much control or as little control as you want to give them, you have the power to generate that. So in this case, I'm going to leave font selection unchecked. Click OK, and you see it still is giving me a size slider, and it's still giving me the ability to add faux styles like italics or boldface. Now I want to be able to change up the colors. There's a stroke on this, this box. I want to make sure and provide stroke width adjustment. And I also want to provide stroke color adjustment, so I can go ahead and throw those in here. Now, I want to start to add some formatting to this so that the editor kind of knows what these controls are. So I can use the little drop-down menu here to add grouping inside this panel. I'll go ahead and add a group. I'm going to call this outline. And I'm going to drag these two properties in there so that when I go over to Premiere Pro, they're going to know these are the outline controls. And again, as I continue to work with this, the fill color, I would probably put that in a different group, and I would say, you know, this is the box color. And again, it's all about organizing and getting this to look pretty so that the editor has an easy job working with this. Now, you kind of have got the basic idea of how to work with the Essential Graphics panel. I'm going to switch to a much more complex example here where we've got some lower third design going on here. You can see with this one, we've got a really nice animated wave background here. Let's go ahead and open up the Essential Graphics for this composition. And a couple of things that you'll see here, one of the cooler things is it's actually talking about spreadsheets. Mogerts can be driven by an external text file like a CSV file or a TSV file. So if you've ever been given a spreadsheet out of Excel that has like a list of names and titles and you need to make a bunch of lower third graphics, it's now possible to make a single motion graphic template and then import that spreadsheet into the motion graphic template. And you can even do things like rig up sliders. So here I have a slider called Spreadsheet Row, and this is rigged up to look at different rows of data within that spreadsheet. Here's the spreadsheet right here. You can see it's called dreamerlowerthirds.csv. So we support the open standards like CSV and TSV files for working with spreadsheets. If I reveal this in Finder and preview this, you'll see this is a fairly simple spreadsheet, but we're doing some complex things. The color values that you're seeing are actually coming from a hex number, like a web-driven color number. So if I have those branding guidelines from a corporation, I can just actually use the hex values for color and have that automatically be applied to my compositions. Now, to export out a motion graphic template, what I would need to do is down at the bottom here, there is a button for exporting motion graphic templates. I simply click that button, save my project, and then this is going to ask me, where do I want to save it? Now, a Mogert can be placed in a standalone file, a .mogrt file that you can put on a thumb drive. You can walk over to your coworkers and let them copy and install it to your different systems. But something built into Creative Cloud that's really cool are things called libraries. A library is something hosted in the cloud. It's an area where you can put content. You could have like a style guide. All your branding assets can live inside of a library. And you can make a library read-write for one person, read-only for other people, so that your editors are always looking at the latest versions of your motion graphic templates. So all of these names that you see here, these are all of my personal libraries. So I've got a library here called Chetan and Carl. I can go ahead and click on that. Chetan Shah is one of my coworkers. He's based in Mumbai, so this isn't limited geographically. Anybody in the world, if you know their Adobe ID, you can share and collaborate in a library. And then we've got some checkboxes here about warning me if certain functions need to be, you want to know if those functions are being used that might make it more complex for the editor to use. Normally, you don't even need to have After Effects installed on the editing machine in order to use a motion graphic template. There are some cases where you do. That's why we have things like these little checkboxes here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this to a library. This goes ahead and saves it out to the library. I can find it in the Libraries panel here inside of After Effects. But most importantly, if I switch over to Adobe Premiere Pro and I look through a specific library, here's Chetan and Carl. Oh, there it is. I can find all the different motion graphic templates that I've saved out to my library, and I can start to work with those and drag them and drop them onto my timeline. I've already got one here in my Premiere Pro timeline, and just so you can see what the other side looks like, here's an example of a motion graphic template that was designed in After Effects. In this case, they did expose what fonts that you want to use. But you'll notice that I have the ability to come in here and choose the spreadsheet row, the colors change, and modify and update. Whenever you use data-driven graphics, you get this special dialog box up at the top here where I can go in and either drop a new spreadsheet in, or I can go in and edit the spreadsheet data. So I can overwrite any of this information, or more importantly, I can click the Browse button and find a different spreadsheet and apply that data in automatically. So now I can have, let's see, is that Kenyatta or that's Savannah? So we want to use Savannah for that one. So you see how cool and easy that is. So this is a general use case for motion graphic templates. It's a really, really powerful workflow moving from After Effects into Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, what unlocks a lot of the power of this function have to do with expressions. Expressions can provide all kinds of specialty control for various things inside of your motion graphic template. One of my favorites is just making sure that the text is sized appropriately within a given box that I'm drawing. Now, we have done a lot of work to modify and update the expressions engine within After Effects. We're using a modern form of JavaScript. We've even also included in this release, there are some new scripts that can be run to actually update. If you've got older expressions, you want to make sure they're using the latest and greatest. We have some automation functions that allow for doing that. But most importantly, we have updated the expressions editor to a much more modern form for going in and modifying the code. This is something that can be customized. There's a new panel in the preferences in After Effects for scripting and expressions. So depending on what code editor you usually use, if you're modifying and tweaking JavaScript code, you can match up the colors that you want, you can match up the behaviors, and there's a lot of modern automation functions that are built into this. Working with expressions, sometimes we do things like use the wrong case in the name of a variable, for example. Here I'm modifying something that's in the mile layer, and it's a very easy mistake to make to accidentally type in lowercase. This now features auto completion, so it's automatically recognizing what other variables or what variables you're using in other layers. And so it's automatically giving me a list here. But also, if I were to go ahead and click OK right now, it will show me an error with a line number. So if I have a complex expression, I can immediately say, hey, there's a problem in line 1. It tells me that type of thing now. So there's a lot of neat things that are built into the expressions editor. Now, if everything I have said about expressions editor, the fact that I'm showing code on screen here is making you break out in hives, and you're like, I'm never going to use this, I just want to point out a really cool resource that got released last year. Whoops. 15 years of doing After Effects, and I still occasionally do that. There we go. This is an ebook that is freely downloadable. It's from one of our master trainers in Europe. A gentleman named Jarle Leerpol wrote this. And the book is called Making Mogerts. Don't take your pictures yet. Hold on, hold on. You can freely download it at this. Okay, go ahead and take your pictures now. Okay. You can freely download this book. And the best thing about it, and the fact that it's an ebook, is you can copy and paste snippets of code that do specific things. And Yarley will walk you through exactly what that code is doing and how to modify it to get it to do precisely what you want to do. So just as a quick example of this, I was working with a composition here, and I'm going to go ahead and get that in the Essential Graphics panel. Very, very simple composition, one text layer, but I've added an expression from the book that automatically resizes text to fit the window. So if I type a small amount, it makes the text bigger. If I type a large amount, it makes the text smaller. So in this example, and here I'm going to use the Essential Graphics panel. Again, this is great if you're just like testing out expressions, because you can quickly come in here, highlight things, and I'm just going to change that to say, hi, and then click off of that, and you can see it's automatically scaled the size of the text to fit my composition. So these are the types of things that you can do with expressions, and Yarley's book will walk you through the entire process of doing this. Okay. Very, very quickly, we're always looking at new performance enhancements. There's been some work to enhance the performance overall, the way the UI works in this release. We've also improved the performance of 2 new effects. This is an ongoing process by the After Effects teams to take all of the different hundreds of effects inside of After Effects and modify them, modernize them, make them GPU accelerated, 32-bit. So 2 new effects in this release. You can see some of the performance speed improvements that we've seen. Particularly these effects, things like change color, don't get applied to a composition once. Oftentimes they're stacked 10, 15, 20 times on a single composition. So we're seeing much better performance. Okay. Now, this is what you guys have really come to see. I've got a shot here. How hard would it be to remove the soccer ball in that shot? Pretty hard? I'd take a day, maybe. How about I tell you I'm going to do it right now, and I'm going to render it on stage in front of you right now in the next minute. Want to set a timer? No, you don't have to. I'm cheating just a tiny, tiny bit in that I have masked and tracked the ball ahead of time. So the red mask, you can see that has been pre-applied. And that was just kind of keyframed. It's very, very rough. It's not a precise mask on the ball. It just has to cover the ball. Next step, change the mask to a subtraction mask. By making it a subtraction so that it basically punches a hole in the video, I'm now ready to use the new feature inside of After Effects, something called Content-Aware Fill for Video. Now, the Content-Aware Fill for Video feature is found inside of a panel. It looks at the entire composition. It doesn't just look at one layer. It'll look at the entire composition. So anything that is transparent in your composition should show up in the little window, and that's the area that this is going to automatically fill. Now, there's some very basic controls in here. I can do an expansion of the alpha on this. Usually I find just expanding it out a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 pixels, works really, really well. We'll talk about the fill methods in a moment. There are a couple of them. But at this point, I'm actually ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit Generate Fill Layer. This starts the process, does the rendering. We'll kick that off here. And you'll notice that the hole has actually been filled. Now, I'm going to play back what this has created for me here so that you can see this. These are the pixels that Content-Aware Fill has automatically generated. It uses a number of different technologies for doing this. It looks at the frames before, it looks at the frames after, sees if there's a place where it can pull pixels from other frames. If it can't, it will actually synthesize pixels by analyzing and looking for patterns in the background. So a brick wall pattern or foliage, things like that, it will automatically synthesize the correct pixels for that. So the end result on a shot like this, I'll turn off the mask. The very first frame, you can kind of see it, but from there, I've been doing things with people, actually just pausing it and saying, hey, point to me where the mask might be. And usually when I click on it, they're looking at a different area. So that was using Content-Aware Fill live. I've got a bunch more demos that I'm going to show you here of this. In these cases, I'm not going to do renders just for the sake of time, but just want to show you some additional examples of using this. So the key thing with Content-Aware Fill is you can mask your pixels and remove those pixels any method you want. The biggest thing when you're using this technology is look for any of the secondary effects being caused by the object that you want to remove. You'll notice that this mask includes the dust trail coming off the back of the tires. It includes the shadow. And again, if we flip this to subtract, I'm just going to jump ahead and show you what the output of this looks like. Deselect the mask, and that's the end result, having gone through the same steps that I just showed you. There's other methods of doing this removal. I mentioned that masking is definitely one way of working. Here's something using the roto brush inside of After Effects. So a completely different method of generating those transparent pixels. And with this particular composition, because the woman never moves, let me show you what the original shot looks like here. The woman in the shot never moves out of the way. We never see what's actually behind her at any point in the video. So Content-Aware Fill is going to have to synthesize those pixels. One trick that you can use if it doesn't give you the best results straight out of the gate is you can generate what's called a reference layer or a reference frame. So in this example, I'm going to start right here in the middle, and there's a button you'll notice inside of the panel here that says Create Reference Frame. What this will do is create a snapshot, drop a new reference frame into the composition, and immediately open it up in Photoshop. So that from here, I can use Content-Aware Fill, I can use the paint tools, and I can fill in this layer using tools inside of Photoshop on this still. Now, if I jump back to After Effects, all I would have to do is save my work in Photoshop, and it will immediately show up in After Effects. And if you look in this composition, you'll notice at the first frame and the last frame, we've actually already done that. So I'm going to jump back to my first frame here. So this is the painted frame that we did in Photoshop for the beginning. We did one more at the very end where we went in and painted that out. And the end result of this, I'll just delete the one that I didn't actually work with. The end result looks like this. Now I'm seeing a little something right there. It looks like the rotoscoping that we did. There's just a little tiny bit of motion along the edge there. I could probably run Content-Aware Fill a second time, masking that area out and have it fill that area in on top of itself. So similar, if you've ever used any of the healing brush, content-aware technology in Photoshop, sometimes you'll do the initial fill, see a little tiny bit of an artifact, and then you can use it again on that artifact and run it a second time. It's super fast, and that's partially how this plays out. Quickly through a couple more examples here. Here's one where we're taking a flag, as well as a couple of people in the shot and actually trying to track them out. I had somebody actually mention to me they were kind of upset because we're removing the Scottish flag. I have nothing against Scotland. It's just basically this is a common workflow. You've got an old castle with some modern elements in it. You're doing a period piece. You need to make it look like days of old. That modern flagpole just doesn't work for that. So really quickly, we can just remove each of these with a mask. These people in the shot. Turn on the layer. Here you can see we've only tracked the flagpole in this version, but I could go in very, very easily and get rid of the people as well. A couple of other examples. How many times has something like this happened in your shot? That's a retake, or is it? Sun is setting. We got the perfect light in this shot. How are we going to fix that? Let me show you. We've masked this guy. Very, very loose mask. Nothing fancy, no rotoscoping or anything, just tracking a mask really quickly. This is the net result. Pretty good? Quickly through some more examples. This one, we're actually using a different mode in the content-aware fill function. If the pixels are never revealed, it's a good idea to use what's called surface mode for the fill method. So if you're trying to remove a logo on a wall, you're trying to remove a poster, this will not look forward and backward in time, because there's no reason to, because those pixels never get shown. And it will work faster. And you can use this in a lot of areas you might not think of. In this case, just to make the shot a little bit more dramatic, we wanted to get rid of these two shadows from some other elements so that the audience's attention is focused on the shadows of the surfer in the shot. And again, this was done in 2 passes, one for one and one for the other. But again, there's the net result. New grass has been grown and replaced the shadows in the shot. There's a third mode that is more of an edge case, but it's useful in certain scenarios, which is edge blend. If what you're trying to remove lives on like a solid color background, this will actually take and use the edges, the pixels just around the edges of your mask, and fill in towards the center and blend them together with the other pixels. So in this case, what we're removing is a logo or a decal on this motorcycle in the shot. And again, I'll show you the end result. There it is. And by combining all of these different modes together with multiple masks, you can really start to achieve what you're looking for in a given shot. I'll show you one last example here. The original shot of this, let me turn off all of the different content-aware fill layers that we have in this shot so that you can just see what the original looked like. Here was the original shot. This is a really compelling tale about this bicyclist traveling across Northern California. We want to make him seem as isolated as possible. And there's this annoying cone in the shot that the drone operator didn't run over and grab before the drone flew overhead. Okay, let's start by deleting the front car. You may notice there's a little bit of an artifact as the car goes by in this corner, so we're going to fix that in another layer. We can get rid of the rear car the same way. Oh, tiny little bit of a leftover artifact right there, so we'll have to do a second pass on that. So as I'm adding these layers on, slowly but surely we're fixing everything and getting to the final shot. Just to show how much of this has been replaced, I like to play this without the background so that you can see all of the synthesized pixels from content-aware fill. Again, powered by Adobe Sensei technology. We're really excited to bring this feature to you. If you're looking for any more tutorials, time to get those cameras out one quick last time before I wrap up. This is a wonderful URL to have. There are not only tutorials, but there's downloadable content that we are providing you free of charge from the Adobe Stock team, so that if you haven't checked out Adobe Stock, you can get some free clips from this site and then run content-aware fill on them to see how content-aware fills for yourself. Thank you guys so much. I'm out of time. My name's Carl Soule.